John, last week we talked about what kind of education for what kind of world, and this week I just wanted to ask you why you use the metaphor of battery hens or free-range chickens to describe the type of education system we would like.
Yes, it's a metaphor I've been using for a long, long time, many years in fact, and it's travelled around the world with me. And people smile. People smile if they actually understand enough about the farming of poultry to know what it means. As a kid, I grew up with close connection with my grandfather's farm in Devon. And as a young child, I realised that it wasn't a good idea to offend a cockerel. If you offend a cockerel, the cockerel, which is no higher than below my knees, could fly at you, and it could clip you in the ankle, and you would scream. And as you put your hand down to put the cockerel away or wring its neck or whatever, it simply flew up to the nearest beam and crowed at you for an eternity. And I was rubbing my ankle, and there was this crow, and I thought, this is just wrong. And then, a year or so later, I saw the first battery farm. And in that battery farm, in a shed of maybe 1,000 or 2,000 chickens, they were all apparently almost content. They were being fed an enormous amount of food, right water, temperature was right, even a bit of soft music in the background. And the farmer was rubbing his hands with glee and saying, okay, with the minimum amount of inputs, I'm getting the maximum of return. I'm getting the largest number of eggs, and even more, I'm fattening those chickens up so quickly that actually I can send them to market in half the time I could if I took the chickens in the free range. And so farming has moved towards battery farming, and we could call it factory farming. It's the same with arable as well as everything else. Now, in that sort of situation, you really have to go back to what I was talking about last weekend. What are we actually trying to educate children for? We're not specifically trying to get, I would argue, not specifically getting them to be able to pass a particular exam. Much more particularly, we're trying to educate them to know how to think for themselves. Now, in that metaphor, the cockerel, with the ability to fly up and escape from me, had got a flexibility that those chickens being brought up in a factory farm most certainly hadn't got. They actually met the specification of the farmer. He was going to get the maximum return on that. But actually, in terms of lifestyle, then in fact the factory farming is quite horrendous. Now, I became a teacher a long time ago, but when I became a teacher, the analogy in my mind was that you went into classrooms and all too often the kids were just sitting there half awake, mouths open, pens poised, almost saying, feed me and I'll do what you tell me. But all I really want to do is to get out of the classroom. What I'm concerned with is that we develop an education system that provides them with the right things at the right time, including in the classroom, as well as outside the classroom, that gives them the ability to think for themselves. And it's the thinking for themselves which is the critical part of education. Because if you look at what is being said nowadays about the system, it's much more about fitting into an economic model. I'm saying education starts, as I said last week, education starts with the development of the whole person.